Everyone is in the meeting now.
Okay, so can I open the meeting?
Yes, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you to this meeting of the Waverley Local Planning Panel for the 30th of November 2022 and start by introducing the members of today's panel. My name is Paul Steen, I'm the chair. The expert members are Ms. Peter Brennan, Ms. Jan Morell, and the community member is Ms. Alison Small. I ask the members of the panel to disclose any conflicts of interest they have in relation to today's meeting. I have none.
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I have none, Chair.
Thank you. And Ms. Small, do you have any?
I don't have any.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll start straight in on the agenda, and it's fairly long, and I'd ask people to keep to their 3-minute time limit so that we can get through in a reasonable time. The first item on the agenda is 8 to 10 Sir Thomas Mitchell Road, Bondi Beach. And the first speaker I have is Mr. Stuart Wilmot. Is he present, please?
Yes, I am.
Oh, hello, Mr. Wilmot. And you're a planner speaking on behalf of the residents of 19 and 21 Francis Street.
That's correct. Yep.
Please go ahead.
We submitted an objection to the original plans dated the 12th of September and again the amended plans on the 31st of October. We support Council's recommendation to refuse the proposed development. Our objections to the proposed development are: it is an overdevelopment of the site, it does not comply with the apartment design guidelines, and it fails to address the exceedance of the height of 12.5 metres in Waverley LEP. Today, I'd like to specifically talk to the issue of the height exceedance. I'm of the view that a clause 4.6 is required because the northwest corner of the proposed building exceeds the LEP height of 12.5 metres. Waverley LEP defines building height in relation to the height of building in metres as the vertical distance from the ground level existing to the highest point of the building, or in relation to RL of a building, the vertical distance from the Australian height datum to the highest point of the building. This includes plant and lift overruns. The northwest corner of the building is set back 8 metres from the front boundary and 3 metres from the side boundary. This is the proposed building. This building is located within the footprint of the existing building, which has a floor level of 25.08 RL. However, the floor level is above the existing ground. Therefore, based on Land Environment Court decision Better versus City of Sydney, we extrapolate the height of the ground level from the nearest measurement of the ground level. The nearest spot level for the existing ground level is to the west and is 23.61 RL. The elevation drawing for the proposed development underneath the roof level of the building is 36.9. It is noted that this measurement given is not from the top of the roof and excludes the lift run. In any case, if it's 36.9 minus 23.61, that would equal 13.29 metres and thus is above the 12.5 height limit. Therefore, a clause 4.6 is required to demonstrate compliance with the development standard is unreasonable and unnecessary. Consequently, I submit to the panel that it's not open to the planning panel to approve this DA.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. Are there any questions of this gentleman from the members of the panel?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmot.
Thank you.
The next speaker I have is Uri Turgerman. Are you Uri Turgerman? Is Uri Turgerman present?
I think we received advice, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Turgerman and Ms. Rubenstein from GSA Planning had withdrawn their request to address the panel.
But I didn't quite, it was a little ambiguous. I understood it in relation to Alina Rubenstein, but I didn't understand it in relation Mr. Turgeman, though he was on the same line.
Yeah.
And he's not present.
I noticed that we've got GSA on the screen.
They're not registered.
Well, GSA was Helena Rubinstein.
Yeah.
She certainly isn't speaking.
No, but I'm just saying we do have the GSA on the call. On the meeting.
No representatives from the applicant will be speaking on this item.
Yeah, I think George is there to speak on matters later on the agenda.
Members of the panel, if I can clarify, if you like. I am here to speak on another matter. We have a number of matters that are before the panel, but we're only speaking on behalf of number 226 Military Road.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Caravana. Okay, well, we assume that Uri Turgeman's not here, and that means that that's all the speakers in relation to this item. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. We'll move then to 180 Wellington Street. Now, there was no speakers, but then I think there's a late application from Andrew Martin to speak.
That's right, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
And are you an architect or planner, Mr. Martin? Or
I'm a town planner acting for the applicants, and we prepared the application.
right. Well, please go ahead.
Thank you for your time, and thank you to council staff for accepting the late application and the panel. Thank you. Much appreciated. It's always a tall order to convince a panel in 3 minutes that the council staff shouldn't refuse the application, but I give it my best go. The report before you doesn't include some pre-DA advice that was issued by council's urban designer. That urban designer in the pre-DA advice sets out that the additional roof space on the roof results in a slightly bulkier building. However, it is considered that it is still be in keeping within its context in terms of scale, especially considering that the property joins other zonings with a maximum permissible height in FSR 13 metres and 1.5 respectively. So there were some positive aspects to this application. I'd just urge you to take a look at the photo montages, the way we've arranged and handled the additional mass, the actual overall longevity of the building as a interwall building will be embellished. We've got improved private open space to a lot of the units that don't have individual private open space. In the compliance table, it does set out a lot of yeses in terms of the ADG compliance, in terms of natural light, ventilation, storage, all sorts of things. So there are a lot of positives that you could take away, including we don't have any more than 15% south facing, 75% of the units get 2 hours of private open space, solar. We are retaining some communal space, but we have lessened it because we've actually provided private open space to some of the units, or quite a number of the units. And therefore we believe that we have some private open space. We'll never give an opportunity to amend the application. So this is the application as it was lodged. Council just put it up to the panel for refusal. We'd love to have an ability to actually amend the application to address some of these issues, or if you were of a mind to defer it, there's no statutory hurdle that I know of, and other panels have deferred application to allow applicants to address some issues, particularly where we've got some positive urban design advice and we're keeping the existing building and embellishing a lot of it. A detailed landscape plan done by Paul Scrivener. As I said, there was a lot of positives in the report. There are some negatives, but what we're saying, it's a lost opportunity. We're providing all the rooms in the roof. We've got one objection. We're surrounded by residential flat buildings, significant number of neighbours, but no submissions, only one, and that can be addressed by way of a condition. So we just ask that the panel consider the contextual position of this site as well. Adjoining that different zone, it's a transitional site. It doesn't stand on its own. It's contextually, and across the road at 25 to 27, you'll be aware of Wellington Street. There was an approval for, and we did that application for a mansard roof on top of the actual corner site, which comprises 3 units in the shop. We successfully integrated a mansard roof onto that application. It was a decent amount of roof line and addition to that building. It didn't cover the whole footprint, but certainly a significant portion of it. Again, there were no submissions to it. It went through, it's over the FSR, but it's handled quite nicely. And we say this application contextually directly opposite, close to the corner, close to the roundabout, close and immediately adjoining a higher zone and a higher height control would fit comfortably. And we just see it as a real lost opportunity. A lot of effort went into the application. It's not a sort of piecemeal application. There's all 3D montages. It's been worked out well. Is it perfect? No. Is it acceptable? Yes. And we'd urge you to approve it. In the worst case, defer it and allow us to amend it so we can address some of these issues like the communal space and some of the issues the council staff had. Have a look at the page where it deals with height non-compliance. I think you'll hopefully agree with me that height non-compliance is very, very minor. It's 1.3, but it's only the edge of the mansard. So we'd ask you to have a look at that as well. Again, we didn't get a chance to amend it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any questions of Mr. Martin from the panel?
No.
Just Chair, one comment is that, and I just wanted to say, Andrew, you will always, if the panel did accept the recommendation, and we haven't made any decision as yet, but if it did, then you could always come back with a Section 8.2 review in terms of those matters that have been identified. It's not like going back to square one.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you to the panel for that comment. Panel member Morell, much appreciated. The problem it's my submission is that 6 months is a really tight time frame, and I wish someone would amend the act. If anyone knows anybody that writes legislation, it should be 12 months, because by the time you amend the plans, get them back in and have that determined and assessed by council staff, they need to re-refer it. It's a really tight time frame. We can do it, but it's I wish they just make it 12 months, and that would help staff, applicants, and it was always designed to circumvent, court proceedings and things like that. So it forces the applicant's hand to go to court because there's not a lot of time. You have to really move swiftly, and council staff need to move swiftly, and we have to have reports back to the panel, at least 3 or 4 weeks or a month before the reports need to be written before they get to the panel. And quite often that 82 time frame is directly right or very close to the panel. I know it's a separate matter, but I just wish they'd make it 12 months. But yeah, we do have that right to put that 82 back in and address it.
Mr. Martin, and you can speak to the government about it, but
yeah, no.
Actually, what they did during COVID, they should have done permanently. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would help every planner and every applicant and every panel as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Okay, so at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. That brings us to the next item, which is 97 Glen Avenue, Bondi Beach, modification application. And is Yvette Middleton present? George Haravanis, who is going to speak on this from GSA?
Yvette will, and Yvette is on the panel. I'm just not sure if her audio is working. Let me just bear with me. I'll just contact her. She's been the officer working with it. Mr. Chair, Yvette can hear you, but she can't unmute, and the panel, I don't know if your administrator has the capacity to unmute her.
No, I don't think we do. I don't think we can unmute somebody at the other end of Zoom.
Okay, I can put her on speaker.
Yeah.
And if you can hear her through my audio, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yvette, can you talk?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear that, members of the panel?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly, Yvette. So
Thank you.
please go ahead with your submission.
Good, thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair, panel and council staff. I'm Yvette Middleton from GSA Planning and I'm here to speak on behalf of the applicant R&B Glenair. Firstly, thank you to the assessing officer's kind comments referring to a high standard of architectural design and that the proposal will improve the amenity of the public domain compared to the approved development. Her remarks are appreciated after all the hard work to amend the proposal. Turning to the approval, the amended conditions are generally acceptable. However, there are a number which are considered somewhat onerous given the lengthy post-determination approval processes previously undertaken. I refer firstly to conditions 41, 42 and 43, where approvals are again required by council staff, despite written approvals already being issued. In each case, the current proposal retains the approved works within the site, with only very minor adjustments to insert the current proposal. Condition 41 relates to stormwater, and it appears the engineer might be mistaken when he refers to changes to the OSD. In an email before you, our stormwater engineer explains there are no changes to OSD, which is actually greater than the minimum council requires. He states the stormwater is functionally identical. The approvals are all in front of you, by the way. As background, the applicant submitted several versions to the council engineer before the engineer decided on the initially amended version. This was a process of more than 12 months. Our client has been careful to retain the approved stormwater system to avoid the need to resubmit for a post-determination approval with this application. May we respectfully request the condition is amended to recognise the approval issued already without further approval being required. Likewise, with conditions 42 and 43, which relate to public domain works, including a street tree, these works have also been approved. The condition has been amended to include the Tristaniopsis lorina water gun as requested by council. May we respectfully request the conditions recognise the approvals already issued without the further approval being required. Two other conditions include what could be considered onerous requirements. Condition 2 lists a number of reasonably standard inclusions, however, has been amended from PCA approval to requiring approval by the Manager of Development Assessment or delegate. We do not understand the planning purpose for this amendment, and resulting potential delays as council staff seem very overworked and under-resourced are a concern. Condition 38 amends the parking allocation to provide 3-car parking spaces for the retail space. We note the retail shop area is unchanged from the original approval, and we further note the minimum parking is 0 and the maximum required is 4. These are not large premises and without a defined use as yet. We respectfully request the retail allocation remains at 1 car space with the balance reverting to residential. This is what I hope to say. If you have any further questions, I'm here to answer them for you.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any questions from the members of the panel?
Probably not a question, but it's a comment, Yvette, and you probably won't be able to answer, but having regard to the submission from your stormwater engineer, the council engineers have advised council, and the council in turn have advised the panel, that the plans are proposing lots of changes to the stormwater management, including the OSD location, layout and orifice diameter, boundary pit levels, etc., as shown below. The orifice diameter has been increased from approved design, which was 87 mil to 90 mil. The basement pump out pit has been relocated. The stormwater management plans must be reassessed to ensure all the amendments are satisfactory. I mean, hearing what you say, but then we've got to hear what the council is saying. So it seems it might need to be resolved between your engineer and the council engineer.
I'm wondering if somebody is looking at earlier plans rather than the current ones, because the engineer stated quite categorically the OSD capacity hadn't changed, and that while positions had moved marginally inside the building, there was nothing changed with the connection to the council system. And that's the concern. I mean, it's inevitable that there are some little changes when the design changes but they were very careful about maintaining what was approved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you. And you say with the previous approval, condition 38 or only required the provision of one parking space to the commercial area or allocated.
That's correct.
Okay, and all of a sudden it's jumped from 1 to 3.
Sorry?
All of a sudden it's jumped from 1 to 3.
And so Yvette, you're requesting 4 resident parking spaces, is that right?
Yes.
And 1 retail.
Yes, we have 2 accessible, 1 retail, and the balance being residential.
So that's 4, is it? I'm just adding up the numbers here. So if you take 2 off the retail and you add it to the resident, that's 4, and you've got 2. Is that right?
Yeah. 4 resident, 2 resident.
This is page 181.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have to get the numbers back in front of me. There's a total of 7.
Yep.
So we had 2 accessible, 1 retail, and the balance were residential. I mean, the accessible were residential as well. Sorry, I'm getting feedback through the headphones because I'm talking through my phone to you.
Okay, it's just that in the table on 181, it shows that the two it just mentions 2 spaces to be accessible. So I was just looking at the A, B, and C. So the A should be changed to 4, you're saying. B remains at 2, and C becomes 1.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for bearing with me while I'm dealing with this feedback issue.
Sorry, Yvette, but we can hear you very clearly.
Just can we can we just go to then 42 and 43 in terms of public domain works? I just needed to clarify the objection to those conditions. 42 and 43. That's page 183 and 184.
I have to take out the earphone when I talk to you and then put it back in, so there's a slight delay for me. This condition asks for detailed civil engineering plans to be submitted to council for the approval of the executive manager, etc., before the issue of the construction certificate. But this has already been provided. So those were the copies of the approvals that we emailed to you yesterday as late correspondence. So that's number 42. Number 43 asks for the same situation of being submitted to council for the approval of the executive manager, etc. The footpath curb gutter is unchanged. The street tree, we have already submitted that it would be a water gun.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
and the others were all approved so that council works outside the site could continue because they were moving towards the site as part of the footpath refurbishment program that council has.
Right. So in this modification, you just to clarify, Yvette, so in this modification, those conditions were there and they've now been satisfied. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if this represents a comprehensive set of the full conditions. Anyway, we can clarify that later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council. Thank you. We'll move then to 226 Military Road, Dover Heights. The first speaker I have is Mr. Joe Handico or Hardico. Is he present? Mr. Hardico or Handico? I'm not quite.
Yep. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Is that
sorry.
Joe, is it?
Yep, this is Joe. How are you going?
Good, we're good. So how do you pronounce your second?
Handogo.
Handogo. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
And where do you live?
I'm actually representing 228, which is next door.
Representing 228?
228 Military Road, Dover Heights.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, look, I submitted the objection back in July, just in regards to a few things that we're a bit concerned about, because mainly just the bulk and scale of it and the overlooking issue, because there's a big balcony at the back there. Like, we don't really have a, I mean, look, if ideally, if that area there would be screened off to overlook our property, then I think we are not overly too concerned. I think the biggest problem that we had is that balcony is overstepping past my building line and the balcony line. And so I think it has a very direct view over my living area, so to speak. So mainly that's number one. And number two, what I have concern about is over the garage area there. I'm not really sure what that area is supposed to be, because it's quite vague and quite, well, I'm not really sure, actually. I really don't know. It's just an area there, which it's a bit suspicious to me, because it just says garage roof, which I'm not really quite understanding what that would be for in theory. So that's mainly my concern, and I'd just like to know what it's for, or, you know, or it's, yeah, that's pretty much my main concern. Hey, and that I'm not really anything more than that, really.
But have you read
Okay,
the
thank you.
conditions? Oh, sorry. Yeah, have you read the conditions, Joe?
I've read part of it, yes. I haven't read the complete. I was actually just
I think
yeah,
there is a condition for a screen in the position that you're talking about.
correct. But the thing is, it's a bit like, well, why would you need or require a screen there over a whole level? I mean, my feeling is that I feel like it's going to be something else after this is approved.
Okay.
So that's what I'm concerned about, really, and that. And so, you know, I mean, look, I mean, the thing is, yeah, I really don't know what that area is for, to be honest with you. I feel a bit weird about that one.
Well, condition.
Because look, it's only got a toilet, and that toilet, it overlooks a void, and it overlooks the garage roof, which I mean, look, I'm an architect by trade, so for me, I feel like it's a bit weird. Why would you even put that toilet there?
Can I just ask you what plan number you're on?
The first floor plan, which I believe would be, I can't really read, it's a bit small here. I've circled it in my submission.
Right, okay. Thank you. We'll go back to
And
that.
you've got the garage roof there, and it's got that toilet area, which I'm not really sure what that is for, to be honest with you.
And just to assist the panel members, it might be that the objector's looking at the notified plans, the original plans, and they have been significantly varied.
Oh,
yeah.
Is it? Okay, then I'm not really sure then.
Well, Mr. Hardico will have a look at it. Don't worry.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hardico. Now, I think Mr. Caravanis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the panel. I am speaking on behalf of the applicant and in support of the of the application. And I would like to say that we concur with the assessment that was undertaken in the council officer's report and the recommendation. There are a series of conditions, and we're not wishing to challenge any of those conditions. We're happy to accept those, both the deferred commencement and the full conditions. As I indicated, and I interrupted, and I'm sorry about that, the matter had been revised following concerns that were raised by council staff and the neighbours, and that has resulted in a scheme that now has reduced the height, has reduced the FSR, has reduced the level of excavation, has increased the setbacks, increased the landscaping, and has now provided screening, be it by plan or by condition. Now, while there is a non-compliance with the FSR, this has been significantly reduced, and the proposal now comprises a compliant interface with the street and the neighbours by complying fully with all the setbacks as well as the height. So it complies with all the envelope controls. You'll see in the council officer's report that it has been confirmed that the objectives of the FSR standard have been met, and there are sufficient environmental planning grounds to support the non-compliance. And I'll just very briefly go through those. Firstly, you'll find that the proposal has a lower height and scale than the neighbouring dwellings. And you can see that on pages 289 and 290 of the agenda, where you see how it relates to the front and rear elevations of the proposal in relation to the neighbouring dwellings. It has a similar or lower FSR than the dwellings in the area, maintains appropriate presentation to the street. It importantly preserves the amenity of the neighbours, is consistent with the desired future character of the area, which is quite built up, and of course contextually compatible with that. So in saying that, we believe that the proposal is worthy of approval. And just in response to the two issues raised by the neighbour, firstly, you'll find on page 262 of the agenda, condition C of the deferred commencement does require a screen towards number 228 towards the north, on the northern side of the balcony, and that will address the concern raised by the neighbour, and that is a balcony off a living area. And in terms of the roof, on the same plan, you'll see garage roof. That is not proposed to be trafficable. It cannot be trafficable, and there is a condition indeed, condition E, which says that the garage roof is to be a non-trafficable green roof. And as I said, we're not challenging those conditions. Thank you, members of the panel.
Any further questions of Mr. Karavanis from the panel?
Well, I just had some concerns about the size of bedroom 3, and I know it is part of the deferred commencement conditions, but the bedroom 3 is smaller than the adjoining bathroom for bedroom 3. And I just wondered, it certainly needs to be some reconfiguration of rooms and storage area for bedroom 1.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's dealt with by condition G.
Yeah. Can I just say that I don't find the plans are very persuasive at all. And the presentation of the building also to the street certainly leaves something to be desired. And I'm a little bit surprised that there hasn't been more attention to the architectural detailing, apart from just the basic issues of the size of bedrooms, etc.
Okay.
And in many respects, the list of deferred commencement conditions, I'm pleased to see that it's required to be approved by council, because clearly there is uncertainty in terms of the plan before the panel now.
And we'll pay close attention to each one of those conditions to make sure they're satisfactory in terms of the way that the council looks at the deferred commencement.
Any further questions of Mr. Karavanis from the panel?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Karavanis.
Sure.
So thank you for your submission. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application, notify our position on the council website. We'll move on to the next item, which is 4 to 12 Cadigal Place, Dover Heights. There are no speakers, so we will deal with this matter later when we come to adjourn. That brings us to 154 Brighton Boulevard. And there was Mr. Michael Baker. Is he present?
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Baker. Now, you're a planner speaking on behalf of the owners of units 4, 5 and 6 next door at 152.
That is correct. I work for SJV Planning, and we act on behalf of those 3 owners.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the panel for your time. And we'd also like to thank council staff, and we support the recommendation that they've put forward for the refusal of this application. We put an objection into the notification of this project, and it appears that the council officers have taken on board our client's concerns. The key concerns that our client has is the increase to the existing building size and resultant bulk, and in particular, the demolition and increase in size of the existing balconies, both at the front and the rear of the building. The existing building, obviously a residential flat building, already exceeds the height and FSR controls for this area. And the proposal seeks to add further bulk and scale, both to the northern side and the front and rear of this existing building. The other key concerns that they have are the extent of demolition of the building, which calls into question whether this still is in fact alterations and additions to an existing residential flat building. Both front and rear facades, including all balconies, are proposed to be demolished. All internal walls across all 3 levels of the building are to be demolished. The northern facade of the ground floor is proposed to be demolished, which begs to question how the walls above and the roof will be retained, as are there significant changes to existing openings on both the northern and southern facades, which are the 2 side walls of this building. We think that there needed to be significantly more documentation submitted in terms of a construction methodology that demonstrates how such a feat of engineering could occur to retain this existing building. I understand why they're doing it. I understand it would be very difficult to achieve a similar building of the same height, bulk and scale in this context, given the disconnect between council's planning controls and what stands on the site today. But notwithstanding that, further information is required to demonstrate how this is going to occur and that it is not a de facto complete demolition and rebuild. The third concern was the extent of excavation. We're obviously on the Ben Buckler headland. We're in very, very close proximity to the rear of the property, which is the cliff face fronting the ocean. There is a suggested geotechnical report having been submitted with the DA that has done no sampling, no testing, no core sampling on the site to suggest how the level of excavation which is proposed, which is a basement level parking underneath this supposedly retained building, will occur, let alone what impact that could have on my client's building, which is in close proximity to this building, in terms of the excavation into the sandstone of this area. Again, that's a lack of documentation that has been submitted with the DA. There were various other concerns that I'm not going to take you through. They have been outlined in our submission. They have been addressed in the council's report. They were the main concerns that my clients had, were increase in bulk and the question marks on, is this a full demolition or alts and adds, and our geotechnical concerns.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baker. Any questions from the members of the panel?
No, thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
No, thank you.
Thank you, members of the panel.
Thank you. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll adjourn and consider this item and notify our decision on the council website. Thank you, Mr. Baker. Come to then the next item, which is 35 Chesterfield Grade Bronte. And I have Mr. John O'Grady as the speaker.
Good afternoon, panel. Can you hear me?
And you're a planner on behalf of the applicant.
That's right. That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead with your submission.
All right. Well, thanks for the opportunity, panel, to speak on this application. We support council's recommendation for approval, apart from the imposition of draft condition 2A, which I've written about in my submission, which I assume you've all had the opportunity to read. So the main concerns that the applicant has with that condition are that, well, in terms of the amenity and the design of the building, of the renovation, there are some negative impacts, and we don't believe that there are any real positive impacts by imposing the additional setback to the side boundary. So the negative impacts are that that there'll be that imposition of that additional setback of from 900 to 1.5 metres reduces the internal amenity of the alteration, in that the upper level bedroom and study would be reduced in area. It also, to some extent, reduces the external amenity, because that overhang, which would be reduced by the design as it stands on the lower level, would allow for rain protection, and also for even potentially constructability and waterproofing of the entrance, the main entrance to the house. With regard to design, our opinion, and it's also principally the opinion of the architect, Mr. Keith Maher, who I can say is actually on the call here today for any questions if the technology allows that. I'm not sure whether it does, so to impose council's proposed condition to set back the top level extension so that it's in line with the lower level, existing level of the building, would actually have, in our opinion, some negative impacts on design, in that building would then present as a single full height 2-storey building without any articulation. And what the proposed design does is it allows for articulation at that front component of the building, both from the street and also from the side elevation from the adjacent property. We don't believe that there's any, you'll see there's some montages that have been prepared by the architect in the submission. We don't believe that there's any real benefit to the streetscape by imposing that additional setback. It's a heavily treed street. There's and the building would, within its current condition, the building would only present as a very small extended component beyond the building elevation from the street. So we don't see any real positives in imposing that condition. And as I've said, there are a number of negatives. The other issue, the other objective of the submission, as I understand, was to bring the building into consistency with the adjacent dual occupancy, adjacent part of the semi-detached building. So the architects was the same architect for both sides of the building, and his intention was to have that similar setback on number 37, which is the adjacent part of the semi-detached, and his opinion, and I agree with him, is that the same design principles apply. So he would, there is a potential intention to actually put in an amendment request for that side of the building. So in terms of the consistency with the adjacent building, our thinking is the same, that both sides should be both extensions to either side of the building should be as designed.
Thank you, Mr. O'Grady.
All I have for the moment.
Any questions?
Panel
to Mr. O'Grady?
Could you just take me to that plan number, Mr. O'Grady?
Which plan was that? Which?
For the 2A condition.
So it's condition 2A in the.
Yeah, I know that. Yep.
Yeah. So where did you want that? Where did you want me to take it?
Just, have you got the plans in front of you?
I do. Yes. Yes.
The plan number.
Drawing DA 02.05, which is the proposed level 1 plan, and I think the condition requires the western external wall of bedroom 1 to be set back about 400 millimetres. That's correct, isn't it, Mr. O'Grady?
That's correct. Yes, so it's an additional setback. So the current setback is 900, which is within the control, and the required setback is something in the order of 1.45, close to 1.5.
Okay. 1.45.
Right, thank you. Mhm.
Probably a good elevation to look at is on DA 0311, the north elevation.
Okay.
Which shows the very tiny in that view from the street. You can see that's a very tiny additional sort of intrusion of the building into the side setback, and it's not an intrusion because it's consistent with the control.
And you say that if the panel was mindful to support what you propose, which is the existing scheme, it would be the intention of the architect on behalf of the owner of 37 to make an application to modify that consent to allow a similar setback.
Well, potentially, I mean, I can't say with certainty that would be the case, but I understand that that's being considered.
Okay. Thank you.
So is there another way of providing protection for the entry?
Well, there are a number of ways, I assume, but you would need a full length awning because that's the main entry to the house, and you could put an awning over the entry itself, but you'd still have no protection as you walk down the side passage, and you would have so yes, so you would need a full length awning along that edge.
Well, yeah, and then that encroaches into that setback area. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Grady.
Thank you very much.
At the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll adjourn and consider this application and notify our decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. We move then to 395 Bronte Road, Bronte. A number of speakers. The first I have is Guy Lake. Guy Lake.
Good afternoon, panel.
Hello. Is your name Guy Lake? And
it is Guy Lake.
397 Bronte Road.
Along with my wife, I'm the owner of 397 Bronte Road.
Yes,
that's the neighbouring property immediately to the east of the proposal.
Yeah.
We strongly object to the application that's been lodged and support council's recommendation for refusal. The proposal is, in our opinion, very unsympathetic with the neighbouring properties and is inconsistent with the scale and the character of the street. It doesn't comply with the LEP height and FSR, and these non-compliances have been dealt with comprehensively in council's report. The proposal's front and rear setbacks also significantly breach the predominant building lines to neighbouring buildings and don't comply with the DCP. They make no attempt to set back upper levels, as is characteristic of the street. And in fact, the proposal does the opposite. It's got large unnecessary projections on the upper levels that are enclosed by full height privacy screens. And these, along with the FSR and height breach, add to the overbearing bulk and scale. The side setbacks also non-compliant because it exceeds the maximum wall height. The setbacks presented on the street analysis drawings are inaccurate and very misleading. And I've provided a detailed summary of these inaccuracies in my letter of objection. But to give you a snapshot of the true extents of the proposed building envelope, I'd simply refer you to the plan shadow diagrams that are located on page 580. You could look at the one that's titled 12 p.m. June 21st. And here you'll see very plainly that the proposal will extend well beyond the predominant building lines of neighbouring dwellings, both to the front and the rear setback. And along with these breaches in the height and the floor space will cause significant loss of light, outlook, privacy and general amenity to both our front and rear outdoor spaces and our main living room. I'm also of the opinion that the shadow diagrams are inaccurate as they don't accurately model the surrounding topography. I've done my own analysis. I'm an architect, and the afternoon sun, there's significantly more afternoon sun loss to our rear garden than is represented on those diagrams. The proposal has very little landscaped area and significant excavation proposed along the rear boundary that'll impact the very large weeping fig that's located on the neighbouring property immediately adjacent to the boundary. Mr. Tim Game is the neighbour to the south. He was actually due to speak on this issue specifically, but he's a barrister and has had to attend court, so had to pull out of that. But I'd just register his significant concerns. We also object to the removal of the significant jacaranda in the front setback and the lily pilly located on our boundary, which have not been addressed or discussed in the planning report. I'd like to emphasise I've got no issue with the redevelopment of the site, but it needs to comply with the planning controls. It needs to maintain the existing trees, and it needs to provide a much more sympathetic interface with neighbouring properties. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Luke Lake. Is there any questions from the members of the panel for this gentleman?
No, Mr. Chair.
I'll just have one question. I'd just like to ask Mr. Lake whether you have significant trees on your canopy trees on your site.
I don't have significant canopy trees on my site. I have trees, but I probably wouldn't categorise them as significant, other than our rear boundary, although that doesn't interface with the property, has 2 significant trees, but they are in the they're in the south east corner of my property, not immediately adjacent to this property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. So the next speaker I have is Mr. Richard Staley. Is he present, Mr. Staley?
Yep, I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
And you're from 393 Bronte Road.
That's correct. I'm directly to the west.
Yeah. Okay. Please go ahead.
Without repeating everything Guy has just mentioned, fundamentally we have no real objections to development. It's more the fact that it's just the scale and the pushing of the boundaries that seems to be prevalent in the submission. That's where our objection primarily comes from. Obviously, Guy's a lot more technical and can comment more specifically on the direct issues with non-compliance with the DCP and LEP, etc. So I won't try and repeat them. But fundamentally, there are just items throughout the development where they list excessive storage areas with no real explanation, and obviously we're looking at excessive just mass of development. So that's fundamentally where our objection comes from, and that's all I really want to point out.
Thank you, Mr. Staley.
Thank you.
Any questions from the panel to this gentleman?
No, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Staley. Is Mr. Matthew Fortunato present?
Yes, I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
You're from Corona Projects on behalf of the applicant.
That is correct. So my name is Matt, and I'm acting on behalf of Corona Projects for the applicant. We submitted the DA. For reference, this DA was formally lodged with Waverley on the 20th of June this year, during which time council was asked for additional information on 3 separate occasions, both formally and informally. All of these requests pertain to amendments to the architectural plans, so clarity, no design amendments were raised, no planning issues were raised. I note that in the agenda, council has raised 4 main issues, and in the essence of time, I'll just run through those 4 issues. Firstly, we have the height non-compliance. As per the submitted architectural plans, the proposed development has a maximum height of 10.78 metres, resulting in a 26.2 variation to the 8.5 metre development standard, and a resultant non-compliance of 2.23 metres. As detailed in the submitted clause 4.6, which I have assumed everyone's had a quick look at, this non-compliance is entirely resultant of pre-excavation on site, in this case, the existing basement garage. Due to the existing basement garage, there is a sharp drop of 4.08 metres in the height plane towards the front of the lot that does not reflect the natural topography of the site. This is clearly visible in the long sections provided. I direct everyone to sheets C3.1 to C3.3 to have a look at this. Accordingly, this additional height does not contribute to the building bulk, result in overshadowing or streetscape presentation of the dwelling. As can be seen in the front elevations, the proposed dwelling is consistent in overall height with the adjoining development, on the high side of Bronte Road. Whilst the numerical non-compliance is acknowledged, we are of the opinion that the pre-existing excavation on site is a sufficient environmental planning ground to warrant a variation to the standard. The judgment of Merman Investments versus Woollahra Municipal Council 2021 supports the claim that pre-existing excavation is a valid environmental planning ground, stating the prior excavation of the site within the footprint of the existing building, which distorts the height planning development standard overlaid above the site when compared to the topography of the hill, can be properly described as an environmental planning ground. I note that the council assessment report submitted with the agenda fails to make any mention of pre-existing excavation on site, simply noting that the requested variation is not supported as it has not addressed the matters required. We ask that the panel consider these environmental planning ground when considering the height non-compliance. Moving on to FSR, in a similar capacity to the height non-compliance. The FSR non-compliance can be attributed to the foyer area in the basement of the site, not contributing to the bulk of the building. I note that we have stated in our submitted 4.6 that the proposed development has an FSR of 0.635 to 1 and a resultant GFA of 315.3 square metres, resulting in a 13.8 variation to the standard. Our GFA was calculated as per the Waverley definition, with only basement storage areas, service rooms and existing car parking, or the required existing car parking provisions excluded. The council assessment report states that the proposal has an FSR of 0.778 to 1, exceeding the standard by over 100 square metres, equating to a variation of 39.33%. Clearly, this is quite a large discrepancy between our calculations and council's calculations. I attempted to contact the assessment officer, Mr. Karras-Keenan, to provide us with hopefully some kind of markup so we could understand what areas council have included and what they have excluded, but they were not willing to do this and simply resent us the definition. Before making adjustments to the design, we'd like to know definitively what areas of the basement council consider to be GFA. With this information on hand, we could deliberate and make design amendments as necessary, but currently we don't have this information. Council's third point is excessive excavation. In their report, they have stated that, and I quote, insufficient information has been provided to give assurance that the proposed works along the rear boundary would not result in adverse impacts on the structural stability of the large weeping fig tree and the surrounding soil. I believe the objector, Mr. Lake, made a similar comment just now. We have provided an arborist report with the original submission that states that the proposed works are deemed to provide a sustainable encroachment to the tree, referring to the weeping fig. On the provision that no excavation is completed behind the line of the proposed retaining wall, and the demolition of the retaining wall, as well as excavation of the retained soil behind that, is completed by hand-controlled equipment under the supervision of a project arborist. It's unclear why council have deemed this information to be insufficient. However, if they required further documentation, all they would have needed done is requested, and we could have provided that. Council's final point relates to inadequate plans and documentation. As I noted earlier, the 3 requests for information were all amendments to the plans for clarity's sake, and we actioned all these amendments as per council's instructions. We are of the opinion that submitted architectural drawings are of a high standard and legible. However, if council requires any further amendments, we'd be happy to make them. All they need to do is request.
Thank you, Mr. Fortunato. Any questions from the members of the panel?
No, I haven't, Mr. Chair.
I'm just, I am looking at the plan. Sorry for the delay. So you're saying that weeping fig can be retained, and you've got an report to that effect.
That's the opinion of our arborist, yes.
Is there any way of setting back the excavation further?
Potentially. Like I've said, council didn't provide us the opportunity to amend this design. These are the first time we're hearing of these planning issues and excavation issues. If these had been brought up during assessment, we would have had the opportunity to amend and reach some kind of middle ground with council, potentially saving us some time here.
Did you do a pre-DA with the council on this one?
No.
Matthew?
Okay.
No, we did not.
Okay, so I don't know whether you were on the line earlier, but the panel clearly hasn't made its decision yet, but I would just make the same comment that you do have the opportunity to come back with a Section 8.2 review in respect to those matters you consider would resolve the issues between you and the council.
I was on the line earlier, and I would make the same comments as I forget the applicant's name, that 8.2 is quite a limited window of time, and that would probably result in some kind of proceeding to court or something along those lines. We would like to ask the panel to defer this DA for a period of 30 days to provide us with sufficient time to address council's concerns, if at all possible, to avoid any potential 8.2s and court appeals that would waste time of both parties involved.
Well, we'll consider your application for deferral, but don't hold out any great hope, because if we were to defer every matter that people said they
I understand.
we'd never get through the meeting.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And just one further point is, given that
Please.
you do have the architect and you sound like you would be responsive to at least some of council's concerns, it would not take a great deal of effort on your behalf to put in those amended plans and ask for that 8.2.
This is true. Yes. If
Actually,
we brought up during DA, we
I
could
just
have.
wanted to point it out to you that
No,
yeah.
I understand.
You can think about that. Okay, thank you very much for your submission. So,
Thank you, panel.
of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. And that actually does bring us to the end of the public meeting, which I'll close at 1, with thanks to all of the submitters and speakers.